I'm very pleased to introduce Nadia Soledad Cavalieri, who's going to talk about testing applications for children. She's an information systems engineer and psychologist. She's been working in testing quality for more than 17 years and is the co-founder of Argent Testing at the Argentinian Testing Congress. She was a judge on the Software Testing World Cup and is part of the review committee of many conferences and certifications. She was recognized by Abstracta as one of the most influential women in testing, by Globant as digital leader in Argentina 2021, and by ASTQB as one of the global finalists for Excellence Awards. She obtained the certifications in testing fundamentals, rational functional tester with Java scripting, Scrum fundamentals, and ISO 9001 internal audit. She often writes for magazines, blogs, and books, gives courses and conferences. Nadia has one YouTube channel in Spanish and another in English. Nadia, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. Let me check that it's everything working. Yeah. Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining me today. I'm very happy to be part of this conference. Today, I'd like you to imagine that you are using an application in a language that you don't speak, German, Chinese, Spanish, or whatever you want, and think how good you feel in that case. Probably you will not understand it and you will not want to use the application. You may feel confused, frustrated, and you will not want to continue using this application. This is the same that a child experiences when using a system that was not developed taking into account its limitations or preferences. In this talk, I'm going to explain you the key points I have learned in a project where I had to test applications for children. Well, in the first slides, let me tell you about some general knowledge about kids, and then I promise you that we will get into the testing stuff, but first we need to know a few things about children, okay? When we start a new project, we have to think, or we used to think about our testing strategy. How are we going to carry out this project? Who will make up the team? Which will be the methodology? Which techniques and tools will we use? A time and resource estimation, among other things. So we start to think about a lot of things, but we aren't used to think about users. Who are they? What do they want? What do they need? What possibilities or obstacles do they have? When the project consists on building an application for children, we have to consider users at the initial stage because our audience is very special. I know that every audience is special, of course, but this one has particular behaviors that we are not familiar with, even if we have children at home. What do we know about children or about children behaviors? Not too much, really. What do they want? What do they like? What are their limitations? It looks easy, but it's a huge world to explore. What do you think? It's the same to test an application for children than doing it for adults? Of course not. If not, my talk we would end here. But the next question is, what are those differences? And this is the main difference between children and adults. Children are still loading. They are in progress, like moving from one state to another in a workflow. Why do we say that they are in progress? Because their cognitive, motor, and social affective development is still happening. So they will act with limitations, not because children are limited, but because they are in the process of development. It's normal that they can't do some things. Although it's normal, these limitations will impact in the way they use or they interact with the systems as any other part of the world. So, do you know this man? He was Jean Piaget. He was a Swiss psychologist and biologist who contributed to learning theories. Piaget distinguished 4 cognitive development stages in children, and these stages are these ones: sensory motor, pre-operational stage, stage of specific operations and formal operations, and in there you have the range of each stage. We will not talk about each one in depth because it's not a psychology talk, but I want to tell you some typical behaviors of each stage because they will affect our testing strategy. In the sensory motor stage, children explore and know the world through the senses and actions. If something catches their attention and causes them pleasure, they will repeat it. So our applications should have repeatable actions. Typical applications for this age are those who has buttons that always repeat the same action. For example, the sound of the animal. You press the dog button and it starts wow, 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 and you press it again and it starts again. In the pre-operational stage, children have two characteristics. They can concentrate on only one aspect on the application, and they don't have the ability to undo actions. If you show them this image and you ask them which one has more volume, they will choose the second one because they will only consider the length but not the width. As I said, they don't have the ability to undo actions. So if we insert an undo button, for example, in an application, it won't be used because they will not prepare for that action. Later, I will tell you a case about this. In the concrete operation stage, they start to classify and sort objects using some criteria. And in the formal operations stage, they can make hypotheses, use logical interfaces, inferences, think about abstract ideas, and have complex thoughts. So this means that children in each stage add different abilities to existing ones. When we design software for adults, our audience has the same abilities. That's why we don't have to consider their abilities. Of course, we have to take in mind accessibility aspects, of course, but usually this used to be only the only one aspect we consider. So when we test application for children, first we need to analyze if they are at the same development stage. If they are, then we need to consider the typical behaviors of that stage. Otherwise, there will be more complex because we will need to develop software that can be suitable for all stages. So as I mentioned, children are different in each stage, but anyway, they have common characteristics and those characteristics are different from ours. So let's review them. One of them is that they are digital natives. This means they began to interact with systems long before we did, but unlikely us, who probably started with a desktop computer or with a notebook, they started with mobile devices such as cell phones or tablets. That's why when the children use new applications, they try to do the same gestures that they used to do with the mobile devices. For example, scrolling with a hand or turning a page with a finger instead of using the mouse. So what this teaches us is that we have to focus on mobile testing. Our applications for children have to be able to support all these gestures because they are familiar with them. And if the application doesn't support them, they will feel frustrated and will stop using it. When we talk about mobile testing, we must also consider our physical differences. Our hands and fingers are bigger than the children, so we also touch the screen with more force than children. So the screen and the application should respond to those differences as well. On the other hand, avoiding frustration is fundamental. Both children and adults can get frustrated when using the application, but we do it for different reasons. Children get frustrated when the application is slow, and adults get frustrated when the application doesn't work. So let's talk about this difference. Children get very frustrated when a system is slow, much more than us. So they don't want to wait because they are more impatient than us. So if we cannot make our application faster, what we can do is to distract them when they are waiting. For example, when we are using, or when we were using, because I think that it's not anymore, but Slack, for example, or Canva, when you want to change the channel, or when you want to download a design, some inspirational phrase appears in the screen. On the contrary, when the user doesn't work, children take it as a challenge and try to solve it, although they have or may have fewer resources than us. So children are more persevering than us in any case. So at this point, we have to concentrate on 3 aspects. One is performance testing, focus on the response time, on functional testing to reduce the probability of systems errors, and usability testing, focusing on preventing user errors. Another aspect we have to consider are the interfaces. We have to keep them simple. As I mentioned, we have to reduce the cognitive load of the applications. Of course, this also applies to all applications, not only those for children, but when users are children, these points become more important because children have less capacity for attention, concentration, and working memory. Just to give you an example, a 1-year-old child's attention span is 3 to 5 minutes. A 4-year-old child attention span is between 8 and 20 minutes. And also the object of attention changes. Children younger than 3 years focus on tasks that are fun for them. And something can catch or lose their attention in an instant. That's why interfaces should be simple. And what does it means? Well, we have to evaluate the complexity of the task, that is according to the abilities of a child, that we have to consider the organization of the information has a certain relationship, and it's well organized, and the amount of information should not be overloaded, just the necessary. And we have to ensure that the interfaces is intuitive, which means it doesn't require too much explanation. Another thing we have to keep in mind is that children read much less than adults. Some of them, because of a limitation, they still haven't learned to read, and others simply because they are lazy. One of the difficulties we have when designing software for children is that the reading level of our users is variable. For this reason, the instructions that we give to fulfill the task must be clear. Clear, but not rigid. We have to give them some guidelines, but also let them to act freely. For this to be possible, we can include some animations or videos as part of the system that could explain how to achieve this goal. If this comes with a descriptive audio, it will be much better. And related to being clear but not rigid, Jacob Nielsen has published a study with an example. There was a 7-year-old child who was using an application, and in order to continue, the application showed a message that said, click with the mouse on the cube. What do you think? Is it clear or not? Think like a 7-year-old boy. Well, yeah, it's clear, but it could be a little bit rigid, and now I will explain you why. Children under 9 years old prefer using a trackpad than using a mouse, because the mouse requires a motor precision that they don't have yet. The same happens when we learn to write. First, we do with markers, and then because they are larger and requires less precision, and then we get more precision and better handling of our movements, and we can start using pencils or pens. It's the same concept. First, the trackpad, and then we can use the mouse. So in this example, if the only one option they have is to click with the mouse, we have some problems. So what's happening in this space? In this case, the boy was frustrated and was not able to complete the task. And how could we solve this? Well, in this case, we can solve it by including a message that says, click on the cube. It doesn't matter how, okay? So related to this, it's important to consider that a child's symbolic capacity is still developing. The symbolic capacity is what differentiates us from the rest of the animals. The symbolic capacity is what allows us to evoke some objects and situations without currently perceiving them. And this is possible using signs and symbols. So we can talk because we have symbolic capacity. I can say apple and you can represent it because we have symbolic capacity. So this is possible. That's why this is possible. But if you say able to a baby, well, it was not possible to associate with an apple. So the symbolic capacity is also what allows us to take things not literally, with enable us to make some jokes, irony, poems, and so on. So why is it important? Because if you say click with the mouse, a child will take it literally because they can represent that there are other ways to do so. Well, I just told you that one way to clarify is using videos or animations. And if these videos can an exploratory audio, it will be much better. Children love everything that catches their attention, animation, sounds. In short, everything that is disturbing for us, they love it. And the only one advice here is what happened with advertising. Children don't see them as ads. For them, ads are attractive and they consider them as part of the system, so as a new feature. So they can't differentiate what is part of the system and what is an advertising, okay? So let's take care of that. And the last suggestion is to appeal to children's mental model. The first time you saw a GPS, you probably understood it because it was similar to a map. Although you had never used a GPS, you had interacted with maps. So to appeal to children's mental model means to refer to something they have already know. We can use analogies so they can better understand what we want to convey. I'm sure you have seen those books that come with pictures to color. There are some applications that implement the same concept. They show you a drawing and a color palette, so you can click on a color and click on the area and it painted. Okay, so this is an analogy. This is appeal to the children mental model. In Jacob Nielsen study, they added 2 buttons to one of these applications, and one of them is to undo actions. And what do you think? No child use them because they don't know, they can't represent the action of undo something. They were not familiar with that concept in the real life. As I said previously, children younger than 7 years old don't have the capacity for reversibility. Well, as a tester, one of the fundamental stages is the UAT, the user acceptance test, where we make our system available to our users so they can validate it. And some important considerations in this stage are get an adequate and diverse number of children. In our case, we made an internal call to all of the members of the company who have children. It was important to have a variety in the sample in terms of gender, age, size, and so on. The meeting was conducted as a playful activity in order to children not to feel observed. We were lucky because we had a GSL camera, so that many of the evaluators did it from outside the room. We divided the older children in groups and we gave individual activities to the little ones. The older ones had the ability to verbalize, so they were able to give us more precise feedback. With those who still didn't speak, observation gained more importance. And something that is very valuable when you are working with children is that they don't have filters when they talk. If your system is horrible, they will tell you. And if it's great, they will not hide it. And something important is to be very patient, because they will not test the system when we want, but they will do it when they feel like using the application. And of course, we can't force them. And it's very important that an heterogeneous group of professionals participate in the observation. In our case, it was made up of developers, testers, designers, and child psychologists. So the UAT was a very productive session. So conclusions time. How can we capitalize all this knowledge about children behaviors and preferences? Well, first we have to focus on mobile testing, make sure they can do all the gestures, resizing, and actions they used to do with other applications. Second, from the functional point of view, verify that there are call to actions. They want to be protagonists. They don't want to be mere spectators. So we need to have calls to action. Make sure that the performance of the system is very good. So we have to do performance testing with focus on response time. Remember that they are very impatient. Verify everything related to error handling, recovering, and prevention. Verify that the instructions are clear and specific, but not rigid. From the accessibility point of view, consider some support for those who cannot read. Also consider that they write more slowly, or that they don't have as much precision in the use of the mouse. And as they are slower, if you use sessions, consider a longer time before the session expires. Well, finally, I want to tell you that testing software for children is very different from testing an application for adults, even though we all have a child inside. Here you have some references to the Jacob Nielsen studies that I have mentioned, and I'm available for any comment or question if you have any at this time. If not, you can reach me in the social network. You have all in my slides. Thank you again for joining me, and you have all the information, and you can download this slide and others from my website. Thank you so much.
Nadia, thank you very much indeed. You finished a little bit early, and I've asked for questions, and I'm waiting. We may get a couple, but let me just have a conversation with you and just wait for a couple of questions to come through. My understanding is that children are kind of a different persona to grown-ups, adults, whatever we call them. Are there things that they are less capable of? I think that's obviously true, must be because our experience is less. But are there things also that they are more advanced than adults and grown-ups? You know, are there things that they actually overtake an adult? Because we all had the issue of, you know, getting our children to get the video tape recorder working, that kind of exercise, you know, back in the days of tape. What do you think? I mean, are they just another persona, or do you think it's a very, very different kind of discipline and an approach required to give them what they need?
Well, I think it also depends on the age, on the system that you are building, because it could be, I think it could be different. In this case, it was for a kindergarten system. So I think, it's a different persona.
So I remember I've got a photograph somewhere of my son when he was, I think he was 18 months old, playing a game on my Macintosh that I had at the time. When did I start using software? Well, when I was in my late teens at school, I managed to get. I mean, we're bringing up children now who have no experience outside using tools, you know, mobile phones and software. Is that still scary, or do you think it's just that we just need to accommodate that kind of user community, if you like, if you want to call them that?
Well, it's very exciting for me. I have a 3-year-old child, and we are exploring together my cell phone, because I want him to to become familiar with technology. So I'm very happy with that situation. I promote that children are in contact with technology. Of course, as a parent, we have to take care of all these things, the time they spend in front of the devices, and we have to manage or try to review the content they use, but carefully, it's okay for me.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of parents kind of regret that IT and software and mobile phones are a problem for them, for their children, in their opinion. Is that something that you'll think will last forever? Is that a fair question to ask you?
Well, I don't really know.
It's a horrible question, but it's a real thing, isn't it? Because we've got software now that is really going to get into the heads of children, I think, with AI and stuff like that. So it's a real challenging problem. And I mean, the comments are all 2 or 3 people have said, well, obviously Ted, thank you, but also something I've not needed to consider before, real eye opener. So there's definitely a demand for this kind of knowledge. Do you think our discipline is going to change, given that we're building software for young children now? I mean, is the software development life cycle going to have to be adapted, or do you think we just have to be a bit more sensitive to what they are about?
I think there is not too much market, I think, because we are in the most of the projects I have worked are for adults, so it was a particular experience. Now I'm testing a game, so I came back to test applications for children, but it was also a strange experience, and I think it's not growing too much. And at the end, I think the process is the same, tools and techniques are the same. The only one thing that I think it's very different is to think about users from the scratch, that sometimes we don't use to think about them.
There is one question I've realized. Who asked this? Richie Cleesby asked, are there any standards like those for accessibility? I mean, could there be a standard for software for children? What do you think?
Well, in the accessibility standards, there is nothing specific for children. So I found more useful the Jacob Nielsen studies, because they were more related to psychologist behavior. So I recommend them.
Yeah. Would you do anything differently? I mean, you told a great story, but would you do anything differently? I don't think you said these are things that went wrong. I mean, what would you do better?
Well, the testing strategy was the same, but maybe we have to give more importance to usability, to response time, to don't write too much words, and to try to explain with analogies. The testing strategy was the same, but the importance of different aspects of testing was different.
Yeah. I mean, I guess kids grow so quickly that actually your requirements would change over time for the same individual. It's not like an adult system at all in that way, I suppose.
Yeah.
At any rate, I think people really enjoyed that talk, and I think you've got a lot more to say, I know. So thank you very much.